Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. This is your boy Jabbar back with another review. Today I do want to do a review of The Old Guard, which just came out on Netflix. What really drew me into this movie is the names attached to it. So first I want to start with Gina Prince Blythewood. She has been attached to some of my favorite movies like Love and Basketball, Beyond the Lights, also Secret Life of Bees. She's been attached to a lot of films. Love and Basketball is probably one of my favorite films, like romantic films. Like I'm not really into romance, but that is one of my favorite like romance films. I also like Secret Life of Bees as well as Beyond the Lights is another romance film that didn't feel too mushy and gushy, but also had a nice little story to it. Also, Prince Bythewood is one of the very few black American woman directors that are in Hollywood that has been consistently producing films. I think this is her first big like action-packed blockbuster film. I actually feel like this film was supposed to be released in theaters, but for whatever reason, well, probably because of the pandemic and stuff like that, they then sold it to Netflix. That's what it feels like. Cause it doesn't feel like a Netflix original. It doesn't even say Netflix original on it. It doesn't feel like an independent film either, because I feel like there was a big it looks like it has a lot of money behind it, to me personally, especially when you have Charlize Theron as one of your as one of your leading cast members. So to have her up there, also to have like big names like Chiwetel Ejiofor, Charlize Theron, they also caught my attention. But who also caught my attention as well as who's attached to this film is Kiki Lane. Kiki Lane, if you don't know, was in If Beale Street Could Talk. I did a review of If Beale Street Could Talk like a year ago. I'll actually put that in the description box below. But I'm just so happy to see her finally getting some recognition and getting some, getting more jobs and stuff like that. I think she's really talented. She was really mesmerizing and great in If Beale Street Could Talk, and I really want her, as well as a lot of other, black actors who are sort of dipped their toe into the arena to get more films and stuff like that, because they've been in a lot of good black films, and I want them to sort of get more work. I was like, yes, Kiki got another role. So The Old Guard is based off of a comic book by Image Comics. It's also based by Greg Rucka. Greg Rucka wrote the comic book, I think, and also did the illustrations, but then also he is set as a screenwriter for this movie as well, so he's also involved in the writing of this 2020 film. I'm gonna start with the bad first. Now that we're on Greg Rucka, have never heard of this comic book before in my life. I was also attracted to the story. The story seemed pretty interesting. It seemed like superhero-ish, but it also seemed very like, what I want to say, it seemed very myth and legend like as well. I think the weakest part of this movie is the writing. I don't know. I've never read the comics, so I can't judge it to the comics. If you have read the comics, please let me know in the comment section below. But I haven't read the comics. If you have read it, please let me know how it compares to the movie and the film version that just came out. But Greg Rucka is on both of these writing projects. He's the original creator of The Old Guard, as well as a screenwriter on the set for the movie of The Old Guard. So it just the writing just seems a little lacking. It seems like it's not very well thought through. It seems a little, I'm just going to be honest, it seems a little lazy. Like I went into this, so pretty much The Old Guard is this movie about, these warriors who have been gifted the ability of immortality. Essentially, they can never die. Well, they can die, but death just doesn't last long for them. They always heal themselves. They always have the ability to heal. And so all of these warriors sort of have been, when they have died in these battles, essentially, across the span of human time, essentially they are gifted the ability of immortality, so they can continue to fight. In sort of all the human sort of strifes and tiffs that we have or whatever for the greater good, and so that they can tip the scales and sort of work for the greater good and all this other stuff and all this other gushy, mushy, romanticized stuff. When I went into it, I was thinking that we were going to find out some more information about where their powers come from, their origin stories. Their origin of why they have their powers and why they do what they do. And I thought we were going to figure it out more. Like, it was kind of really frustrating to me, to have Charlize Theron's character, who is the eldest immortal in this group of immortals. You know, she has been living for thousands of years, yet she has no idea about where her powers come from. She can really give Kiki Lane's character Nile, and Charlize Theron plays Andy. And Kiki plays Nile. She is the newest member. She was fighting in Afghanistan when she died. We don't really know when Andy died. Charlize Theron's character died. She doesn't remember a lot. She's been alive that long where she just doesn't remember a lot of faces or names or places and stuff like that. She has no idea what's going on. Like, it's just very hard for me to believe that Andy never went and sought any sort of understanding. Like, she's been around for thousands of years, but she doesn't understand where the fuck her powers come from and why she's been gifted them and why they work the way they work, and why also is it there's this like curveball that's thrown in there that, you know, everything always must come to an end. Not even the immortals last forever, you know, not even you know, eventually their time runs out and they stop healing at the same rate that they used to. But it seems to work unequally. Like, for some reason, a guy that they knew, a black kid that they knew back in the day, he died fairly quickly. I mean, well, at least before her. She's been alive thousands of years, you know, but she's still, I mean, she's starting to, Charlize Theron's character, Andy, is starting to also deteriorate a little bit and not heal as fast as well, but it's taken her thousands of years to get there, while it's not taken others thousands of years to get there. I'm just a little confused about the construction and the world building of this story. It just seems very weak and a little lazy to me, to point where, like, you know, Greg Rucka just sort of constructed, it's like he does what like a lot of some writers do when they have this great idea and this great concept, but they don't really put in the work to like lay down the constructions of the foundations of the world they're trying to build. They don't really lay down a whole lot of rules, and that makes it kind of frustrating to me, especially as somebody who pays attention to world building. And, you know, I really hone in on the specifics of like the rules and what are the rules of this world that you're trying to create. And it just seems to be the rules just seem to be very flimsy. Sometimes they apply, sometimes they don't. And then also it's just very hard for me to believe that Andy has gone thousands of years and she doesn't know she hasn't even inquired about any of it. She's just like, oh well, that's what it is. That's what she pretty much, that's pretty much what she tells Nile. Pretty much tells Kiki's character Nile that, you know, she really has no idea what's going on, and she just knows that they fight. That they're supposed to fight for the greater good for whatever reason. And it's like, this is a very flimsy construction story. Also, in terms of the writing, I feel like there were certain parts that were a little cringy to me, that I'm not really into the over romanticized dialogue where people go on these long tangents about love and stuff like that. Like, to me, and duty and obligation, and it's just very flowery language that doesn't seem to really fit well with, you know, it doesn't feel natural to me. I don't really like it. And so there are a couple parts in here where like characters just go off on tangents about duty, obligation, honor, love, da 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 da. Like, to me, if you have to continue to if you have to say like, and that's why I don't like a lot of romance movies. If you have to say love 50,000 times throughout a movie with it, then you're probably not a good writer. Then you're probably just not that great of a writer, just because to me, like, you're supposed to show that love. It's supposed to be like in a movie, you're supposed to show that love. You're not supposed to like constantly say love 1,000 times or like give these flowery speeches. And there were a couple of points where people gave flowery speeches that I just found very cringy. The most noticeable one was the one where they're trying to, you know, big up, you know, gay marriage and, you know, gay relationships and gay partnerships between especially men, because that has seemed taboo in our society and our culture. So Nikki and Joe, and I like their characters, by the way. I did like their characters. I enjoyed them besides one besides one scene where they're locked inside a van together and they're all, you know, they're trapped by these guards or whatever, and like the security men are like kind of harassing them. The security men are pretty much harassing them and talking down to them and just sort of, you know, being antagonizing towards them, and they're sort of giving a little back sass back, and I like the little back and forth. But then I don't know if it's Nikki or it's Joe, I forget which one it is, but essentially uh he breaks out into this like big flowery speech about how he loves his partner. Also, Nikki and Joe in this movie, they met, you know, fighting against each other in the Crusades, which I thought was an interesting backstory that I hope that we can, you know, develop further, because it looks like there's going to be a second sequel. But yeah, it looks like there's going to be a sequel to this film, because of the way they ended it off, and I'll try not to give too many spoilers away in this review, but it looks like there's going to be a sequel to this film, or a couple sequels that it could be, a couple installments that could be added to this film, especially since we didn't get a whole lot of information about what was going on in this first film. Hopefully there is more. Hopefully there's more so that we can delve deeper into the story, because I think it is more interesting story, but it's just the world hasn't been constructed properly yet. But despite all of that, despite the romanticized language and flowery language that will sometimes happen between characters, despite, you know, the lack of construction and rules set to this world, in this first movie at least, there might be rules that they just wanted to, you know, be coy with and stuff like that, which is fine. And they might want to save it for the second movie, which is great, if they get a second movie. But that's the only thing that's the tricky thing about Hollywood. Sometimes you get greenlit for a project, but sometimes it doesn't get picked up for the second time. So we'll see what happens. But what I did like about this movie, I felt like the actors and the direct, and like I felt like Gina did what she could with what she had. So even though the construction and world building wasn't that great, I still feel like she told a pretty good story. Like she talked about everybody's backstory. I forget the guy's name that, you know, fought with Napoleon, that also ends up betraying them at the end. He had a really great backstory about him and his son, and how he had to watch everybody die. And it really feel like she wanted to sort of get across the fact that, you know, living forever, this concept of living forever, it seems like such a great idea until you realize that a lot of pain, a lot of struggle, a lot of terrible memories you have to keep. The terrible memories of, you know, watching people die, and watching people also hate you and, you know, resent you because you can live as long as you want to, but they have to go through sickness and death and all this other stuff. And I feel like that was really made poignant with that guy who was supposed to be, you know, I think his backstory was essentially that he died fighting Napoleon. But yeah, the guy who plays Sebastian, and also Charlize Theron's character Annie, they seem to be struggling the most. And really this idea and this concept that I think Gina Rodriguez, and also Greg Luca, of course, he also assisted with it because he is the writer. I really feel like she honed in, but I feel like Gina Rodriguez really honed in, because there was so lack of construction and world building. She really, you know, honed in on this concept of, is being immortal, is living forever really a blessing, or is it a curse? And I really feel like at the end of the day, it was like it was some curse shit. Like I kind of would. I don't want to live forever after watching this movie. The only ones that don't seem to be struggling with it, because they have each other, is Nikki and Joe. They're the only ones that seem to be like not, you know, struggling with it, because they seem to, you know, they can live eternity with each other. They have found, you know, their soulmates essentially in one another. And so they're kind of all, you know, well with it, whatever. But, you know, and so that leads, of course, Sebastian to go and do stuff that he regrets later on. But Charlize Theron's character Andy understands why he does what he does, because she understands how he feels, because, you know, they've been alone for a very long time. They faced a lot of heartbreak and a lot of heartache. There is this really nice backstory with Charlize Theron's character Andy and her sort of love interest slash friendship. It's not really laid solid or whether they had a romantic relationship, but it's kind of hinted at that her and this other immortal named Gwen, they were like the first two immortals, you know, that ever knew each other, that the first were ever created, and the first ever lived. And Gwen ended up getting into some trouble when they were in England. Gwen was locked in a cage, you know, because they were hunted, because they were accused of being witches. She was locked in a cage and thrown overboard by some human beings. And essentially she was, you know, set to live there at the bottom of the sea or the ocean or whatever she was thrown at, to like die and come back to life forever. Like she just keeps drowning and then coming back to life, and drowning and coming back to life. Kiki Lane's character Niall, she has a vision of Gwen at the bottom of the ocean, because somehow they are all sort of psychically linked. All of the immortals are psychically linked. That's also how they find each other, because they find each other through these sort of vision dreams that they have when they're sleeping. Kiki Lane's character Niall, she sort of enters the group. She's sort of the new, you know, while the others are kind of tired. I don't want to say old and tired, but they are kind of old and tired. They're kind of tired of doing the same things. They kind of lost the fight in them. They don't want to fight anymore. They just kind of want to sort of they're sulking essentially in their own despair and sorrow and all the pain and sorrow that they've seen over the course of being alive, which is a lot. So it's understandable that they are losing a bit of fight in them. And so at this point, Kiki sort of gets born or as an immortal. She is, you know, an Afghan war soldier. She also leads like an all-female squadron slash platoon in the Afghanistan war. Niall and her platoon essentially go into this sort of compound where these women are being terrorized by this man. They go essentially to go in and bring him out, but they end up getting into a firefight with him, and Niall ends up getting sliced in the throat and dying. And that's when all the other immortals essentially have this vision of her, that she has died, that there is a new immortal that has been born. Essentially, the plot essentially surrounds the fact that they're being hunted by these people who want to do research. Chiwetel Ejiofor is hunting them, along with, he's working for this other guy, this white guy, who wants to do this research on it so they can, you know, find out a cure to dying, essentially, so that everybody can essentially live forever, so they can also figure out ways to cure, you know, diseases and incurable diseases, because these people, you know, can never die. And they think that somewhere in their genome lies the secrets to how they can sort of cure people of their own sort of ailments and stuff like that. The white guy wants to use it because he wants to use them, and he's hunting them because he wants to make money off of it, and he wants to profit off of it. Chiwetel Ejiofor's character, essentially, he has other plans for them, or essentially he also is involved in experimentation and wanted to experiment on them, but he actually has a little bit of morals. He doesn't want to like hurt them or torture them or nothing like that. He wants it to be humane, but of course when you're dealing with crazy white people crazy white villains, that is never going to happen. And so essentially he ends up helping them at the end, after he helps them get captured, essentially, and hunting them. He essentially, I don't know how much that adds to your morality, that, you know, you're helping a bad guy capture people so that you can pretty much sort of, you know, alleviate your own guilt, because he sort of gives this whole backstory and this whole sob story that, you know, he watched either his daughter or his wife die essentially from cancer, what it was, and he's just always wanted to sort of save people from that type of pain. Kiki's character is also struggling with the obligations to her family because her mother, she has suffered a loss already by the death of her husband, who also was fighting in war, and so she would have lost also if Kiki just sort of disappears, and sort of goes along with the story and narrative that, you know, she died in war, which she did die in war, that her mother will be devastated once again. She just wants to speak to her mother one more time to sort of let her know and understand, but they kind of advise against it because, like I said before, the guy Napoleon sort of says that your mother would just resent you because you know, he felt resented by his son because he could not die, but his son got diagnosed with like tuberculosis or something like that, or some type of cancer or something like that, and he died, and he resented him, and he, you know, he said, you remember all the nasty things they said to you, so you just need to sort of do a clean break. But I really enjoyed this movie. I really enjoyed the relationship that is being built between Kiki's character Niall and also Charlize Theron's character Andy. I hope it continues to develop. The plot continues to thicken, as, you know, we see in the last scene where Gwen comes back. Oh, sorry, spoiler alert. I just put spoiler alert in the description box below and also in the title. But let me know what you think about this movie. Comment down in the comment section below. Like, subscribe. Tell me also what you would like me to review next. And I'll see you next time for the next video.